having first spoken clearly to the greatest provider of my own government.
Cops caught a body by the week ago. Applying an illegal joke. Cops caught a body by the week ago. They even caught it on the video. Cops caught a body by the week ago. Ayanna Jones while she's sleeping home. Cops caught a body by the week ago. I will use all the police.
Good evening. With that intro, that means it's now about 9:05. My name is Muhammad Bashir. I'm your host this evening for the new show here. It's called The Raw Law Project. And I hope I got your attention with that intro, because that's the nature of what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about the raw law. We're going to talk about the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet. We're going to talk about our citizenship and our rights under the law, especially as it relates to criminal justice. Now, first thing you want to know is, who is Muhammad Bashir? You can Google me. You'll probably find some very horrible and horrendous things. So in the interest of full disclosure, let me tell you about myself. I'm a retired attorney, 28 years of criminal trial experience. You can't name the nature of a trial that I haven't tried. I'm also the author of the book, Raw Law, An Urban Guide to Criminal Justice, which was originally written as Raw Law. It was picked up by took it out of the realm of hip hop. I guess it sounds a little black, but you live and you learn as you move forward. First of all, let me say welcome to you all. Hopefully everybody's listening and tuning in. If you're over 35, make sure you grab your child and pull them to the microphone, or pull them to the radio, or pull them to wherever it is you're on the computer, and let them listen in, because they're about to get educated. And if you're under 35, go outside or to your room and grab a pen and a pencil and begin to write. Because there'll be a quiz at the end. I'm here because the Raw Law Project is a teaching tool. Many of you find yourselves having to deal with the criminal justice system. You find yourself having to understand concepts like knowing your rights, knowing what it is that you should do out in the street encounter as it relates to the police, knowing what's going on in a courtroom. Many of you are victims of crime, and so therefore you're wondering, where is the justice? Many of you are, for lack of a better way to put it, criminals. And so you're trying to find the best option in your situation. Well, this is what I do. This is what I did for 28 years. Understand the system and outline it for you. Maybe you got a public defender or something. Maybe you have a lawyer who's maybe a neophyte, maybe new at this. Well, go get him on the phone, get her on the phone, tell them to listen in, because they may learn a few tidbits. And then there's a call number here too. They may want to call in and add a few tidbits. I'm not adverse to intelligent discussion or intelligent conversation. What I am adverse to is BS, for lack of a better word. You just heard me say, you just heard Martin speak for me, that he could not lift his voice up again unless he spoke firmly to the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet. And you heard Malcolm as well. That beat that you heard behind that was by the group Leftists. It's a Maryland-based band. And just so that you know, when people are yelling out and telling you that hip hop is dead, it's not dead, it's alive. They just got it hidden from you, just like they have everything else hidden from you. So with that said, let me say a couple of small things about the criminal justice system. One, the first thing is, you always need to understand, in my book, I try to outline for you the cardinal rule, and I want every one of you to write this rule down. The best way to avoid this monster is to do your best to stay out of it. Now, sometimes you can't avoid it, and that in and of itself is unavoidable. But the real critical part of this here and this discussion is going to be, how is it that you begin to deal with it once you recognize that you're in it? Well, the first way for you to recognize that you're in it is to understand that you're an American, that you're black and you're an American, that you're white and an American, that you're poor and American, that you're under the thumb of an American system that benefits off of criminal justice, that benefits off of people who get themselves caught up in the criminal justice system. And you know, I have a rule that I like to tell people, that the criminal justice system is such a monster, it's such a beast, that if it wasn't a crime out there, they'd make one up so that they could eventually arrest you with it. Like, for example, if you just assume everybody out there is hustling, and believe me, you call it hustling on the street. Drug dealing is not hustling. Drug dealing is drug dealing. Let's get it straight. But let's assume you out there and everybody out there was hustling, and everybody got together and conspired to say, okay, we're not going to hustle on, say, Wednesday. On Thursday, the government would pass a law saying it's illegal to conspire not to sell drugs on Wednesday. I'm telling you, that's how the system works now. When they invited me here, they said they wanted it raw, and that's the name of the book, and that's the nature of what I do. I want you to understand it this way you don't have any illusions. I know I know if you're a child, if you're a young person, and you're looking at the circumstances of what's going on in your communities and around the country, you're wondering, what can we do? I've been to so many forums, and I listen to people and experts talk to the kids and to the people about this is what you do in a police-citizen encounter. And since 9 times out of 10, that's where criminal justice system introduction begins, why don't we begin there too? Now, this isn't going to be your civics lesson. So if you got your pencil, understand you got to write some of this down because you'll be quizzed about it later. All right. So everybody who's ready, raise your hand. Okay. All those hands up. Cool. That'll work. Now here's how we're going to do it. I want you to imagine that you're riding down the street in your car, or you're walking down the street in your neighborhood, a neighborhood that you've known all your life, and you're 15, 16 years old, and the police roll up. You already have a perception of the police, especially in your neighborhood. And the police, frankly, have a perception of you. So now you have a decision to make. You got to understand what it is as to how they're perceiving you, because just like you're perceiving them, they are perceiving you. Let's assume that you got one of those cops who's perceiving you negatively. And let's face it, if you're young and black, the stereotype is already there. You have the evidence of it. Trayvon Martin, 15 years old, menacing. Tamir Rice, 13 years old, 12 years old, menacing. Mike Brown, big, like a gorilla. I think the cop described him. He was like swelling up, menacing. You can go on and on and on down the line of the stereotype and of the nature of the fear and of the nature of the disrespect that is shown because you're young and you're black. And I'm not saying, because you can't change being young and black, so I'm not saying you got to do anything out of the ordinary, but you have to understand what the rules are. The first rule is to understand that they perceive you a certain way, and always accept the negative. Always accept that they're going to perceive you in a negative way. So then therefore you can adjust your tactics. That's the word I'm going to use. Because I don't want you to adjust your personality, think you have to be something that you're not. No, just adjust your tactics. It's kind of like any of you who play hoop. You got a kid who's like, you're guarding, you're 5'9", he's 6'5". Well, I mean, look, he's going to go down in the post on you, right? So you know that. So you have to adjust your tactics on how you're going to guard him. Are you going to front him? Are you going to side him? Are you going to call for help? All these things are tactics. And you have to be willing to say, I'm going to adjust my tactics because your life literally is on the line. Your reputation is literally on the line. So let's assume you got that good cop, what they call a good cop. We'll discuss that. And he's just interested, he's investigating something, or he's just interested in making sure you get home safe or whatever. Your demeanor tells a lot to him. Sometimes they come to you looking to change your demeanor, hoping that you'll run, hoping that you'll do something out of the ordinary. And frankly, sometimes you run, because in your neighborhood, sometimes cops are threatening. Sometimes cops do what they do in, like, say, for the city of Baltimore. A kid runs, the next thing you know, they forget to turn their camera off, and you can catch them planting the drugs in a can behind a wood somewhere and charging the kid with it. Isn't that amazing, though? I mean, come on. Isn't that an amazing concept? That you can catch your own foolish self in that kind of an act. But you see, before there were body cameras, we were doing this kind of work, and we knew that this travesty, these kinds of situations were going on for forever. You just saw in Chicago a mass dismissal of cases, but when you talk about a mass dismissal, they're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 cases dismissed because a particular cop either lied or planted evidence on people. But this came out 4 or 5 years after maybe 25 of them had already done their prison time. What do? How do you recover from that? How do you get that back? Regardless of what rules you followed, the rule didn't work. What happened was the system eventually caught up with the evil, or with the dirt that was being planted all over your name and all over your reputation. And think about it. All you ever hear about Chicago is the murders. But what about all these kids that are going to jail based on made up evidence and things like that? I mean, what do you do when you start counting your crime statistics and people start talking about black on black crime, and you find out that in Boston there was an examiner, a lab technician, who would examine the alleged narcotics found in cases, and she would just make up what she wanted to make up, and they wound up dismissing 1,000 cases. That's 1,000 perceptions of minorities as criminal that have gone out into the world that you can't change. What you can control, though, is that original encounter with the cop. That original encounter, you have to control it, because, again, like Philando Castile, your life is on the line and there's no telling what's going to happen. And there are no hard and set rules. You just have to be the best you can be. Castile was the best Castile he could be. Officer, I have a gun in my car. You can have my license. My girl is in the car. My baby's in the car. What do? Didn't help him at all. Walter Scott takes off and runs. 5 shots in the back. What do? Ayanna Jones, sleep at home, shot while she's in the bed or in the bathtub. Ramarley Graham. I mean, I can go on and on and on. But the code and the most critical aspect of everything that happens in criminal justice is control what you can control. And if you can find a way to avoid the system, avoid it. Now, some of you will take off and run. Well, there's a Supreme Court decision that basically says that if you run, that creates a suspicion for the police to stop you, right? But now they're backing away from that, considering that you all just had Freddie Gray, and there's no evidence that Freddie committed any crime that would warrant him running. I don't know why anybody would fall for that, but that's me being cynical, me. But the idea is your conduct is going to be judged, not the officer's conduct. And if the officer's conduct ever gets to be judged, it'll be 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. What's your history here in Baltimore? Many of you just read, especially in Baltimore, many of you just read the newspaper, the Baltimore Sun. And in the Sun, they just had an expose on officers, a group of officers who had been arrested. They were a gun patrol, gun task force, and they were hustling. They were the crooks. So now they're charged with everything from soup to nuts. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you when you come across that encounter? See, and you have to understand the nature of the intimidation. Hopefully those of you who are not, who believe in criminal justice, who believe in the system, are seeing what really goes on in criminal justice now, as it's playing out in Baltimore, as it's playing out in Chicago, as it's playing out in New Orleans, as it's playing out in Charlotte, as it's playing out in New York City, as it relates to minority communities. And so therefore, when you do your job in the criminal justice system, you're not riding off the stereotypes. You now have evidence. You now have a history. You now have the ability to see what the community has been telling you for like 30, 40 years, that the community is under assault. Now, that does not obfuscate or eliminate the fact that the community sometimes is its own worst enemy. I mean, we haven't gotten out from under the thumb of hustling. We haven't gotten out from under the thumb of violence. We haven't gotten out from under the thumb of emotion going mad, where we think that because somebody disrespected me, I should punch them in the mouth, or I should go get my gun, or I should, I'm feeling despondent today, so I'm just going to take it out on the first person that I see. I'm going to snatch that gold chain. We haven't gotten out of that yet as a community. And the reason why we haven't gotten out of that yet is, frankly, because we don't value our own lives, not the way we should. We have to learn to value our own lives. That's going to be the first thing that keeps us out of the system. If you value your life and you know that person who's pulling you over has a gun, and that person, and you assume that he or she has bad intentions, you will do what's necessary to do the most important thing, and that is get home that night alive. Now, with that said, I was lecturing at Jessup Correction Center maybe about 2 weeks ago. And so on my way here, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open up my email and see if anybody has any questions, because I invited the guys down there to, send me some questions. And lo and behold, here's one. Are you ready? You taking notes? All right. I see you taking notes. That'll work. This question is from an inmate at the Jessup jail. He's about ready to go to trial. Here's what he says. I am trying to decide if I should go to trial in a criminal case. My lawyer says I may have a good suppression motion, but I'm not sure I understand him when he is explaining it. I was told you can explain it so that I would understand. All right. So that's what I'm going to do. And I told you this is going to be class, so get your notes out. Suppression means just that. Suppression means that you're going to try to keep out of evidence in front of a jury or in front of a judge, evidence of what was allegedly seized from you. That comes to you by virtue of the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says that everyone is protected from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. Unreasonable is really what the question is when it comes down to that. What is reasonable? Reasonable means that they have a reason to search you that is based on probable cause. Probable cause means that they have reasonable belief that a crime was committed and that you committed the crime, or that you're in possession of something that is potentially illegal or harmful to the officer. So again, you're always talking about government intrusion, not individual intrusion. If I walk up and pat you down and search you, etc., and you allow me, and I pull something out your pocket and the cop sees it, you're getting locked up. That's not an unreasonable intrusion because it doesn't come to the government. But if a cop walks up to you and just pats you down, just begins to search you and find some contraband without ever having had a reasonable suspicion that a crime was committed or probable cause, then that is suppressible. Suppressible. Now, why do I say that? Because that's your civics lesson. That's your civics definition. That's your law school definition of what it is. In the real world, you're gonna have a hearing. In that hearing, the cop is going to come in. He's going to give up all these stories about how you look suspicious and you would make eye contact with him, and that raised his suspicion level, and that he could see that there was a bulge in your pocket. And so he just patted it down for his own safety, which he's allowed to do under Terry versus Ohio. These are all the stories he's going to tell. And when he felt that bulge in his pocket, it felt like vials, and vials in his mind registered that must be cocaine or this is what's used to carry illegal narcotics. And so therefore, he now believes he has probable cause to reach in your pocket and remove it. In your suppression motion, you are trying to say, one, I didn't do anything that would arouse his suspicion. I just happened to be black in the neighborhood and he was messing with me. First of all, so that you get a clear understanding, every judge in the phone book, everyone, no matter what the history is going to look at this case with a jaundiced eye the minute they recognize that it is a stop because you were black. They don't even allow you to make an argument that he stopped me because I was black, unless you have proof that is like a historic proof against the officer that he has a history, or that the department has a history of stopping people because they're black. So even if he was the most prejudiced son of a gun in the world, and he decided to stop you, and he's been doing it forever, and nobody has complained about him stopping you because you were black, that evidence that you're saying that he stopped me because I was black becomes marginally admissible at best and may not be admissible at all, because you can't establish the conclusion to the satisfaction of a judge that that's the reason why he stopped you. Because he's going to clearly say, look, he refused to make eye contact with me. When I came to the left, he went to the right. And so therefore, now you have a credibility question. Your word against the word of the cop. Now, frankly, I mean, how often do you think that works in your favor? All the guys that got their cases dismissed in Chicago, it was their word against the cop, but they lost. So suppression motions are winnable, but don't bank on it too often. Why? Your Fourth Amendment, even though it allows, it argues against unreasonable searches and seizures. What the government then does is they carved out through the legislature and through the courts maybe about 10 to 15 exceptions to that. So for example, they can't stop you walking down the street. They call it stop frisk. But they carved that out. Stop frisk became almost the law of the land for a while until a judge in New York said it's illegal. So what do? They come up with what they call exceptions to this. One of them is hot pursuit. Freddie Gray was a hot pursuit case. He saw the cops, they looked at him, he looked at them, they made eye contact, boom, he ran. All right, maybe he dropped something. I looked like he dropped something. It looked like he had something in his hand, looked like it was a gun. So we began to give chase. Hot pursuit. Anything that they find in relationship to you and they search you after a hot pursuit is considered to be something that's within the realm of reasonable suspicion or probable cause. How about plain view? So for example, you're out on the street corner, you make what they consider to be a hand-to-hand, or you have a bag and you drop the bag and vials fall out. That's plain view. They're allowed to run up, seize that bag, take it from you, take it from your person, etc., because they can see clearly what it is. Another exception carved into the law. That's so that they can get around the Fourth Amendment. How about, here's one that's even better. How about plain smell? Since we are very fond of marijuana here in the urban areas, we are very fond of smoking marijuana. Why? I have no idea. I have no idea why we are fond of marijuana. Like it really does something that benefits us other than take our money. It's like you might as well be smoking cigarettes. It does nothing for you. But that's just me ranting. In any event, plain smell. If they believe they smell marijuana or something that remotely resembles their training on what a crack pipe smells like, they are now have the duty or an opportunity to investigate your area of privacy to determine where that's coming from. How about hot pursuit, where the person runs into a house? They're chasing that one person. When they get to the door, they push the door open. Now, what are they doing? They're scanning the entire house. They're supposed to be looking for one person, but they're actually scanning the entire house for the purposes of being able to see what's going on in the house. And anything that they see within that scanning of the house becomes a plain view sighting because of the hot pursuit. Now you see how the two come together. Isn't that intriguing? But again, over and over and over, the government carves out exceptions, and those exceptions are always designed to take away your opportunity to argue in a suppression hearing, search and seizure. All right? Give me about 30 seconds and I'll come back and we'll talk about how do you use search and seizure when you're getting ready to go to trial.